Today we're going to talk about a couple of concepts that are very important for regaining and maintaining health in the human body. We're going to talk about food combining and timing, when you eat the food and how you combine it when you eat it. There's three major divisions of food. There's protein foods, there's carbohydrate foods, and there's fats and oils. And there's some mix of all of them in a lot of foods that nature provides us, but there will be a predominance of one of those over the other. So that's how it gets its classification. So for instance, grains, they have some proteins in them and they have oils in them, but they have a lot more carbohydrates, and so they're classified as a carbohydrate food. Animal protein, meats, have no carbohydrates. They have protein and fat, but they're primarily a protein food and are classified that way. And then oils, and say like butter, things like that, are classified as fats and oils. They don't have the protein in them. They don't have any carbohydrates in them. Now these foods have enzymes that are necessary for them to be broken down in the digestive tract. Enzymes are sensitive to pH, or the acid-alkaline balance in the digestive tract. The enzymes that break down proteins require a more acidic environment for them to work right. The enzymes that break down carbohydrates require a more alkaline environment for them to work correctly. Fats and oils require a slightly more acid environment also for the enzymes to break fats and oils down. So if you put proteins and carbohydrates in the same meal, their digestive mediums are opposite. So what you're going to have is a neutralization of both extremes of acid and alkaline, and you're not going to have very good digestion of either. So when you don't digest what you eat, it creates toxicity. You get fermentation of the carbohydrates and putrefaction of the proteins. So when you get fermentation happening in the gut, you get alcohols and vinegars being produced, which are toxic to the body, and you get gas being produced. Just like if you make beer or wine, you ferment grain or you ferment fruit, those ferment organisms are going to create carbon dioxide gas that you can see bubbling out of a fermentation lock when you make beer or wine. Same thing happens in the gut. If you don't digest your food, you get fermentative indigestion. You get gas and bloating, often reflux of acids of fermentation from the stomach up into the esophagus, and you don't digest, you don't get the nutrition out of the food that is the reason that you're eating the food in the first place. And you're creating toxicity, so the body has to expend more energy trying to denature, break down these toxins that are created and get them out of the body safely. So oftentimes you create a deficit of energy by eating foods that you can't digest, or combining them improperly, or eating them at the wrong time of day. Now the body has a pH tide, and that means early in the day your body is slightly more acidic, and then later in the day it swings slightly more alkaline. And the pivotal time is around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and that doesn't change with daylight savings time. The body doesn't know the difference. So before that time, the body's more acidic, and that's the time where protein digesting enzymes can work better. In the afternoon, the body's more alkaline, and that's the time when carbohydrate digesting enzymes can work better. So again, when you mix these together, proteins and carbohydrates, you don't digest either one very well. So proteins and fats usually come packaged together, and they should be eaten together earlier in the day. Proteins and carbohydrates should be consumed with vegetables. And you should have about 5 different kinds of vegetables, ideally 5 different kinds of proteins in the same meal, early in the day. And then you should have vegetables again with the carbohydrates late in the day. Now the vegetables help you digest and move those meals through. And raw vegetables contain more enzymes which help you digest, as well as the fiber that helps you move those foods through the gut. So carbohydrates, again, in the afternoon. And fruit is a carbohydrate. It should be eaten late in the day. And ideally away from other foods, because fruit is primarily sugar and water. And it'll get held back by even other carbohydrates. If they're more complex, they take longer to break down. They're going to hold the fruit back, and it's going to start to ferment. And then it'll ferment everything in the gut. So you want to avoid that. Have your fruits, especially melons, by themselves. Now your meals should be 6 hours apart, and your last meal and your first meal should be 12 hours apart. And you don't want to eat right before bed. 2 to 3 hours before bed is ideal. So say you ate at 7 p.m. and then you wouldn't eat anything again until breakfast, 7 in the morning. And then 1 o'clock in the afternoon would be 6 hours later. And then 6 hours after that would be 7 o'clock again. The reason you want 6 hours between your meals is that anytime you eat anything, especially carbohydrates, you're going to have an insulin spike. If you eat carbohydrates, you're going to have more of an insulin spike than if you have fats and proteins and vegetables primarily. But you're still going to have a spike in insulin, and that cycle of insulin takes 4 hours to complete. Insulin's job is to store unused glucose in the blood. What the cells are not able to burn as energy gets stored as triglycerides, as fat, in white adipose tissue. And this is deposited in the abdomen, in the hips, butt, and thighs. That's where white adipose tissue is in the body. Men accumulate more in the abdomen, where women more in the hips, butt, and thighs. So, if you are on a sugar-burning metabolism, in 4 hours, when the insulin cycle is completed, your blood sugar is going to drop and you're going to crave more carbohydrates. So you're going to want to eat again. And when you eat, you start another insulin cycle. Again, that takes 4 hours. Now, after the insulin cycle, you should have a 2-hour cycle of glucagon. And insulin and glucagon are both enzymes produced in the pancreas, and they have opposite functions regarding how the body handles carbohydrates and fats. So the glucagon allows the release of fats from storage to be burned as energy. And insulin blocks the release and burning and stores more glucose as triglyceride, as fat. So if you don't get that other 2 hours after the insulin cycle, you're going to just eat, store, and then eat, and then store, eat and store, and you gain weight, and you develop the metabolic syndrome that most people suffer from today. So it's important that you understand this. And if you crave carbohydrates late in the day, that means you didn't have enough protein and fat earlier in the day to sustain you. So if you've experienced that, then you got to up your amount of protein and fat. How much protein do we need? Well, if you take your ideal weight in pounds and cut that in half and have that as grams of protein every day, that's how much you need to maintain. Now, if you're convalescing, if you're you're an athlete, you're fighting infections, things like that, you're going to need more protein. If you're trying to do a metal detox, you're going to need more protein. So it's important that you get enough. And if you don't have enough protein in your diet, the body will cannibalize its own protein. It'll start breaking down your muscle tissue and replacing it with fat. Your heart muscle, everything is affected if you don't have enough protein. And you want to be able to digest that protein. So you want your stomach to be able to make enough hydrochloric acid, gastrin, pepsin, things that you need to start the protein digestion process in the stomach. So it's important that you eat at the right time. Now, if we look back as recently as, say, 4,000 to 6,000 years ago, traditional Chinese medicine humans knew that we had acupuncture meridians. And acupuncture meridians are like energy highways on the body. And we have 12 pair of these on the body, and they're on each side of the body. And there's 2 controlling meridians that go down the middle, front and back of the body. Each of these energy highways are like copper traces on a circuit board. They communicate energy and information from the organs and glands in the body and regulate the function of those organs and glands. So again, there's 12 pair of these meridians. And each of these meridians has a 2-hour time period. It's called the now point, where that meridian is more active than any of the other meridians in the body. Now, the time for stomach to shine, stomach now point is 7 to 9 in the morning. So that's when the stomach is capable of digesting protein better than any other time during the day. If you take the opposite time on the wheel, on this meridian clock, in this case it would be 7 to 9 p.m., that's when the stomach would be at its weakest point. And that's during circulation sex meridian now point. A lot of people eat protein between 7 and 9 at night. That's when the body has the hardest time digesting protein. So if you eat protein late in the day, it's not going to be digested, and you're going to go to bed with a meal of undigested food, and you're not going to sleep very well. Your body wants to be alkaline while you're sleeping so that it can cleanse and detoxify and rebuild. So when you go to bed with a meal like this, especially with proteins and fats late in the day, your body becomes acidic, and then you don't sleep very well. You toss and turn, you have fitful sleep, and you wake up tired. And people do this over and over and over again. So it's important that you understand this. After about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, have your carbohydrate meals with vegetables, and before 2, have your protein breakfast and lunch. Proteins, fats, and vegetables. So if you can understand these concepts and apply them in your lifestyle, in your meal plans, it's incredible the changes that happen. Everything becomes much more efficient. You get more nutrition out of your food. You create less toxicity. There's less energy expenditure. And remember, 80% of your total body's energy is used to digest food. So the more efficient we can make this, the more energy I've left over for healing and rejuvenation, rebuilding those billion cells an hour that the body makes. 24 billion cells every day. These cells all have membranes composed of fats and oils and proteins, in addition to all the other components that are all the enzymes and everything inside the cells. So the body needs these on a daily basis, available just for rebuilding all those new cells in their membranes. So very important that you understand this and apply it. Some people, when they apply this, a number of their symptoms start to disappear. So hopefully this will help you.